apologize in advance for the audio quality. Hi, I'm Phaedra. So, I believe I said a while back that I was working on rewriting a character profile so I could share it with you guys. In truth, I am doing this because I don't believe I'll ever be able to make this story into consumable media. However, I still want to share the world I've spent so long making and still like to work on every so often. That being said, this video is a deep dive into a character I've talked slightly about a few times on this channel. V is the name. The voiceover will probably be more like a poorly done student essay, but I didn't know how else to tell you guys about her in full. Final thing before we get into this project, this is my own personal project, and as such, I of course reserve the right to change anything and everything I deem necessary. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the info dump. Starting with general information, V's full name is Vazenth Raylum. Yes, I made that up, it doesn't mean anything but what I want it to mean. That being said, her first name, Vazenth, means follower of the raven or deathbringer, and her last name, Raylum, is taken after an uncommon flower that has the ability to withstand harsh conditions, meaning strong, brave, survivor, and lover of the unusual. She's got a few nicknames from friends and family over the years: V, Vaz, Viz, and more recently, Twin Tails from Ace. She's gained these nicknames due to them being shorter and easier to say, or, in the case of Twin Tails, it's a harmless jab at one of V's physical traits. V also has some titles she carries. Whether or not she knows about them comes later in life. These titles are very simple: Vazenth, daughter of Lucifer; ruler of ravens; bringer of death, or she who brings forth death. Despite her human appearance, she is only half human. The other half of her is a deity, which makes her a Nephilim, or at least my version of a Nephilim. To make things hopefully easy to understand, Nephilim in my world are human in core appearance, but can wield magic that rivals that of their deity parent, for a limited time of course. Nephilim can in fact show off the appearance of a deity's more true form, however that typically happens when they wield their magic more strongly. Last thing about them, Nephilim age slower than humans but faster than deities. For instance, Nephilim grow older every 2 human years until they reach 10 years old. Then they grow older roughly every 1089 human years until they eventually die. The only way to change how they age is by casting a time spell. Now with the Nephilim information out of the way, we can get back to V, with her celebrated birthday being on March 27th, 307 New Old Era, or NOE. Think of NOE like AD or CE, and the other timeline indicator BA before amalgamation to be like BC or BCE. Her primary birthday isn't really important, but for fun I'll tell you that it's April 17th, 64,170 BA, and with both birthdays making her an Aries. Now, unless I say otherwise, I will only be referring to her celebrated or secondary birth date. That being said, V is 17 in Nephilim years, or 7,569 in human years. If you do the math, you'll find she doesn't age the way she's supposed to. This is because she's had a time spell placed on her. If you couldn't tell by now, her pronouns are she, her, and she is aromantic, asexual, and single. Not too much interest in a queer platonic relationship. Her birthplace is the Crystal Fields, Yei, before moving into the town of Fieldgate, also in Yei. Yei being spelled Yeigh. I figured Y-A-Y would not be fitting for a country, so I went to a random word generator. She does have religious beliefs like most others in this world, her religion being faith of the deities. Super on the nose, I know. However, in this world, there is physical evidence that there are deities, and V's social status is that of a guildless, lower-class adventurer. However, it does raise up as she goes on adventures, discovers things, and eventually joins a guild. For fun, I did take some personality tests to see how I could flesh out V some more. Her blood type would be B, which makes her the hunter type according to some chart I found. I don't know how accurate it is, but for simplicity's sake, I used that chart for all of my characters. V's MBTI type is ESFP, also known as the entertainer. I'm still working on her mannerisms and speech, but some quirks of her speech is that she's blunt and she mumbles when annoyed. Next category, oh my gosh, I can't speak, is the physical description chart, starting with her height. She's 157 centimeters or 5'2". I was aiming for a body type that was in between pear and hourglass, and also between average and curvy with some muscle. I don't know how well I did with that though. I don't think I need to describe much of her color palette or some of her features with you, as you can clearly see it. But in case I have random speed paints of anyone but V in the background, I will show a picture of her on screen. As you can tell, she is incredibly pale with slightly messy, vibrant red-violet hair and dull aqua gray eyes. She's very fit, seeing as she spends a lot of her time on adventures and such. I tried to go for a somewhat gothic Lolita-inspired outfit for her as I was really into it at the time of designing and refused to change it just cause it just looks so good. She has multiple scars across her body, most of which I always forget to draw because of how faint they're supposed to be on her character. However, she does have a large burn scar on the back of her right shoulder after helping out some short-staffed firemen at one time. Her skin was left permanently pale after being imprisoned by her father. More on that later. And though they have faded with time and magic, the many scars across her body came from a millennia of battle and resistance in her first life. V is left-handed, and her posture tends to appear rather closed off at first, still appearing bold but somewhat standoffish. However, her posture later grows to be a little more open and energetic. I do hope this all makes sense. Her physical description was hard to script out, but I'm sure I'll be able to script her attitude much easier. For instance, V is like her adoptive mother Asali in that she's energetic and has a big heart. She's typically sweet but has a large guilt complex, preferring to work alone for the fear of other safety. Can be rather fidgety, especially when bored, and is very playful and encouraging, isn't one to turn down a good bet or a dare. When she's got a good cause, she'll fight for it until the end. Typically good vibes, however, she's got a decently bad temper and will lash out if someone pushes her buttons too much. Restless and patient and doesn't take a lot of time to plan things out, but I just think that adds to her charm. Super easy to entertain, going on thrilling adventures, or just spending some quality time with people can leave V satisfied for ages. Despite V's strong yet stubborn and good-natured personality, she's got a dreadful feeling inside that not everything is as it seems in her life, and there's something about herself that she can't quite grasp. Her only indicators of this being there's something more to her are the faint scars across her body and a creeping sensation, thus leaving her feeling hollow and offset. V refuses to let anyone face things alone. She has a massive fear of not doing everything she can to help people. TLDR, she's strong-willed, stubborn, daring, adventurous, energetic, with an air of false confidence that later becomes true confidence, enthusiastic, courageous, selfless, and quick-tempered, and temperamental, impulsive, foolhardy, passionate, active, and supportive. At least, those are the traits I want to portray in her. She likes people who have interests that she's unfamiliar with, or do things for reasons or in ways she finds intriguing. Loves traveling and wandering. Fruity and sweet alcoholic beverages are fun on occasions, and food that reminds her of Asali's cooking. She loves gelatin/jello, quality time especially. Music, dancing, trying new foods, talking and placing bets, but she's also likes to do a lot more calming things too. Wind chimes, origami, and gardens are some of her favorite quiet time things. Things V dislikes, on the other hand, are people who feel predictable, unmotivated, unenthusiastic, or are very shallow and surface level. Doesn't like super hot or cold things, bland food, or iced tea, and she struggles with staying in one place for too long, and isn't a fan of puzzles or academics. She hates feeling weak or helpless and unable to save people, and finally, she can't stand butcher shops fishing or fishing huts. Just can't do it. V's philosophies consist of things like bending rather than breaking, never doing more than you're willing to give. If you share the danger, you share the prize. Your attire doesn't determine your character, and revenge is a two-edged sword. There's more, but those are the shorter ones. I'd like to think that she'd say something along the lines of always move forward and never forget those you've lost or hurt. Carry them with you and help them fulfill their wildest dreams. Makes me think she'd get along with Tartaglia. V's priorities are to save as many people as possible, finding the thing that she's felt faintly drawn to for ages, seek the reason as to why she's felt she's missing something major in her life, and protect her friends and help them fulfill their goals and dreams no matter the personal cost. Some of the next few parts work on a scaling system, so x out of 5 or x out of 10. I'll try and make this make sense as best as I can. Vi's got mediocre self-control at 2 out of 5. Her academic intelligence varies on the subject, but overall is a 2.5 out of 5. Her self-confidence starts low, despite faking it, at 2 out of 5, but grows more as she learns about herself to be a 5 out of 5. Her general social skills, sense of humor, and empathy are all 4 out of 5, and meanwhile her apathy is low at a 2 out of 5, with her passion at a solid 5 out of 5. I do have her love language, because everyone has a form of it. I know it's a pseudoscience, but it's helpful when figuring things out like this. At least so, I'd say. V's giving love language is primarily acts of service, then quality time, then physical touch. In terms of receiving, it's quality time, acts of service, receiving gifts, physical touch, and at the very bottom are words of affirmation. If she were to have the opportunity to have one wish granted, it would be to have all of the questions she struggles with answered. What questions are these, might you ask? Well, it's things like, why do some people have so little time? Why are living beings so cruel? Why does she feel as if she's hollow and something is missing? Things like that. Now we're at the character extras section, where more scales are involved. For context, 0 is below weak, 2 is weak, 3 is sub-average, 5 is average, 7 is above average, 8 is strong, 10 is incredibly strong, and you can probably fill in the gaps from there. Her physical strength varies. When we meet her, she is an 8 out of 10, but later grows to be a 9 out of 10 on average. However, with bursts of power, V can grow much stronger than that. Her stamina is an 8 to a 9 out of 10, with her speed at a 7 out of 10. Her agility starts at a solid 6 out of 10, but grows to an 8 out of 10, and her conviction is at a 9 out of 10, as she has very strong personal beliefs. I want her charisma to be a 7 out of 10, but I still gotta figure out how to be charismatic. So, on the other hand, V's cooking, hunting, and gathering skills are at a 2.5 out of 10, 4 out of 10, and 2 out of 10 respectively. Her fishing skills, 0 out of 10. She is not easily jealous at a 2 out of 10, I don't think, though of course that could depend on the situation. She's decently creative depending on what we're going off of, but overall is a 4.5 out of 10. She's pretty hygienic, doing the best she can with what she's got, but would stay much cleaner if she had the materials. Not very lazy at a 3 out of 10, but is also not very patient at a 3 out of 10 on a good day. Otherwise, she's rather expressive at an 8 out of 10, finally. She's fairly trusting at a 6 out of 10. Prefers to trust and regret than doubt and regret. Character quirks. Okay. So these quirks are as follows. She fidgets a lot when stuck in one place for too long or bored. She's always been an active person, so it's kind of always been like this. She doesn't even realize she's doing it. She also has a habit of sitting in ways that may be considered odd, unusual, or even seemingly uncomfortable, often sitting on the arms of chairs, backwards, or sideways to feel more comfortable. Despite being unable to cook well, she has a cookbook of her favorite recipes from Asali. Ace and Oscar also have the same. Now we're at favorites, one of my, favorite parts. V loves peach and raspberry gelatin, a recipe made by one of Asali's mothers. But she also adores peach melba. I hope I said that correctly. Butterfly pea tea lemonade is a favored drink. Oddly enough, the only iced tea she accepts is good. Loves the color Very Perry and Abergynleam. Oh gosh, that is really hard to pronounce. V also has a fondness for the story Jack and the Beanstalk, as told by Asali. She feels most excited with music that she can dance to, and doesn't really have a particular favorite there. doesn't have a favorite place or person particularly, but favors 3 of her possessions as if they're the only treasures in the world. These possessions are Sully's hair ties, Lily's doll, and later, Amara's brooch. Doesn't really have a favorite vacation, but adores seeing where her friends are from. Let's rapid fire a few more of her favorites. Sport is dance, hobby is collecting art, season is spring, weather is sunny, animal is ghostlands, plant is valerian, elderberry, and jade vine, memory is taking care of the cafe with her family and taking Lily to festivals, and activity is learning origami. Finally, her favorite holiday is the Feast of Flowers. Every 3 years, on the 1st of May, this holiday is celebrated with pure delight. This is a celebration that originated in Fieldgate and spread to other villages as a celebration of NOE. This is the holiday that is associated with colorful lights, flowers, grand feasts, and romantic gestures. It is traditionally celebrated for half the month of May, but festivities can last more or less depending on personal preference. Okay, least favorites. I wasn't sure if I should add this in, but I'm gonna do it anyway, and it can be skipped by those who don't want to hear it. V's least favorite dish is roasted chicken and beetroot stew. She used to enjoy it, but it was such a common dish in Fieldgate that she started to hate it. Meanwhile, she hates the drink Basil's Smooth Lady. I haven't decided if it's an alcoholic beverage, a smoothie, or tea, but either way, she strongly dislikes it. V dislikes the color red-orange and has a strong distaste for any fable ever, as they're really annoying to listen to. She also isn't a fan of music that she feels is too slow to dance to. This includes waltz music. It's just not her thing. She does have places she's not fond of visiting, such as Rathel. Think of it as hell or where demons live. And of course, grave sites. V's least favorite people are her biological siblings, father, and Odium. You'll learn more about who these people are later. While Asali's hair ties, Lily's doll, and Amara's brooch are her favorite things, they're also V's least favorite things, strictly based on the negative memories. She doesn't have a least favorite sport, as it's not something important to her. However, she does have a hobby of hers that she doesn't much like. V collects cool bookmarks as part of her art collection hobby, but never knows what to do with them as reading isn't her strong suit. V isn't much of a fan of winter, mostly because of the snow, but it's fine when the temperatures are less frigid and less snowy. However, if it's windy in any way, she does get frustrated as brushing her hair out is not easy to do. And don't even get her started on the fog. Bad memories all around. There's a popular phrase in the country of Yay. All is good to those with pure hearts. V despises this phrase, as it's simply not always accurate. Bad things can and will happen to good people, and good things can and will happen to bad people, as unfortunate as it may be. V's least favorite animal is the duck. They used to be cute, but ever since Mina told her how evil they are, she just can't look at them the same. V also doesn't much like the Crown Imperial Lily, for personal reasons I haven't fully figured out. Like many others, V has a least favorite memory. It just so happens to be that it's witnessing and causing many deaths, though she doesn't remember much of this until later on in life. On a more wholesome note, she much dislikes the activity of crochet. She has no problem with others doing it, she just thinks the activity was time-consuming and confusing in all the wrong ways. The last part of this section is her least favorite holiday, the Festival of Ancestors. Every year on the 7th of September, this holiday is celebrated with much gratification. This is the celebration with deep roots dating back to BA. Today, this holiday is associated with traditional attire, coming-of-age rituals, respect for the deceased and ancestors, and spirituality. It's traditionally celebrated for 7 days, but it's not until the second half that the celebration really goes all out. While V does enjoy this festival, it's just not her favorite cup of tea. Oh boy, now I'm on page 13 of the script, and only 8 out of 28 of this character profile. What am I doing to myself? Okay, so this next section of the character profile is very, long. I'm sorry in advance. Background information, yay! V's hometown is in Fieldgate. Yae, as previously stated, she starts off as an adventurer and keeps that occupation throughout her travels, but adds on warrior and later on guild member. Yes, she's very satisfied with her job and doesn't really start as a job and more of a thing she does for fun. Next, we'll talk about the Adventurers Guild ranks. For these, I basically looked up a bunch of ranking systems for guilds and changed up the ones that worked best a little bit. The ranks go from lowest to highest as follows: F, E, D, C, B, A, S, and X class. F class is for people who are skillful at handling weapons slash magic and or can fight low-level monsters with difficulty. This is probably where V would have started before she meets Cien Rei. Keep him in mind, he comes up later. E class is where people who can beat monsters that can't be beaten by normal people are. These people are trained. D class is for veteran soldiers and adventurers. This is where V is after Cien Rei, but a little lower than where she remains when we meet her. C class is what is above average veteran warriors and adventurers claim. This is only slightly higher than where V starts when we meet her. B class is a rank that elite, skillful warriors and adventurers can maintain. A class is for select and highly rated skilled warriors and adventurers, potentially where V may be when she finally joins a guild, depending on how the timeline goes. S class is for those who surpass the typical high standard of skills and A class guild members, the second option of where V may be when she finally joins a guild. Finally, there's X class, which is considered to be above physically possible for most, if not all, species in the physical realm, where the story mostly takes place. V has a decent education considering her being homeschooled. She's learned the core subjects of math, reading, writing, history, and some science. However, with Asali as her mother, she did get some culinary arts, though much of that was forgotten or failed. She's never been great academically, but she can reconfigure some of her knowledge if she works on it for a while. Very simple education, but very solid. Well, at least at the time. VA doesn't have or make a lot of money, being just barely above broke with the ability to make money through odd jobs here and there. However, she does start to earn more once she joins a guild and takes on commission work. While V doesn't have a permanent home anymore, she did grow up in a two-story building that was a home on top and a cafe on the bottom, later moving into a cottage-like house in the forest in the mountains for a period of time with Miriam. I'm not 100% on V's home decor style, but I think it's either very maximalist, with all of the things she loves and adores, or minimalist, due to not knowing how to even start decorating her space. If it is maximalist though, I'd say think Studio Ghibli but with darker colors and slightly darker tones. I don't know though. Oh, yes, V does have a pet. I keep forgetting to draw them though. Their name is Wren Twig. They're a little ghostlin who wears a small bluebell flower on their head, as blue signifies independence for ghostlins. I chose the name Wren Twig for them because 1, I think V would think it's cute, and 2, Wren is a songbird that I believe is often associated with poets, songwriters, musicians, and writers in Celtic folklore, and twig means small branch, obviously. I chose the Wren in Celtic folklore because that's one of the cultures that Yae is based off of. Okay, getting back on track. We have V's police record, which is fairly short as it's just her getting caught without an adventurer's license and a guild membership. You didn't always need these, but it did get put into law and required that all travelers/adventurers have one of each before continuing their journeys. Luckily for V, she was just let go with a warning. Now dealing with V's skills. We have her ability to fight with a scythe, her weapon of choice. V took up an interest in combat at the early age, and with a strong desire for adventure and need to protect others. First, she learned how to fight without weapons, but once she got her hands on a scythe, oh, she was a natural, thanks to old instincts, of course. V has also learned parkour and dance, mostly being self-taught from watching others and later practicing on her own. While she may not be the best, she is certainly skilled at what she does. Lastly, V is physically flexible. This is mostly due to her stretching and wanting to keep up with her physical health and an odd sense of comfort. On to V's incompetences. We have reading and writing. She's not sure how to read or write most things, never been her strong suit. Honestly, if she just had someone to reteach her in a way that was better suited for her, she'd be golden. However, V is also terrible with directions, so maybe not quite golden. If V had a detailed picture, she could probably find her way around without too much help. If you give her vague or verbal directions, though, you may as well have sentenced her to weeks, if not months, of deciphering and getting lost. Some of the strengths I wish to give V are strong will, physical flexibility, passion, honesty, loyalty, vigilance, athleticism, courage, or is it stupidity? And being supportive. Some weaknesses I want to throw her way are her impatience, stubbornness, impulsiveness, academics, directions, as previously stated, temperamentalness, recklessness, and poor time management. I like to think that V has a good handful of hobbies. You could argue the semantics of each of these in relation to hobbies, but let's not do that, please. As stated many times before, V loves traveling and adventures. She also collects small art pieces from different artists that she puts in an album whenever she can. Eating tours, origami, watching the clouds or stars, she loves it all. And despite her inability to read, she likes to collect pretty bookmarks. And lastly, she's a fan of gardening. V has a bit of a natural green thumb. She can't really identify plants, but she's good at troubleshooting what they may need and tends to care for them pretty well. You can thank her childhood neighbor for that. Some of the habits I want to give V are more like secondary quirks than habits, as habits are hard for her to gain unless it's by accident. For instance, she tends to maintain a tighter grip on her weapon when very sad or incredibly angry. She also likes to talk to butterflies or the ravens who follow her around. She's always viewed the ravens as her friends and butterflies as her adoptive mother, Asali. She has a tendency to observe her surroundings, noticing small movements and details that others don't, though she doesn't always have the words to describe what she saw should she try to tell someone. She also cracks her knuckles to release tension and traces over the scars on her skin. In a good mental state, it reminds her that she can still be taken down despite her strength. In a bad mental state, it pushes her deeper into self-hatred and fear. V's physical condition is phenomenal. She's in great shape. However, her mental condition isn't the best and only gets worse for a time after she regains memories. Initially, she has nightmares of death and pain, but those go away after a while, only to come back as flashbacks of what she's done. V tries to save as many people as she can, and every time she fails, she ends up beating herself up more as her silent past keeps haunting her. The walls in her mind eventually breaking down and mentally ripping her to shreds, leaving her to slowly pick herself up, piece by torn piece, all in hopes that she can save just one more person. She does eventually let people in, and when she does, the relief she feels is otherworldly. Now we have V's past. This takes up a little over 7 pages in the character profile, so I'll try to sum a few things up as I type. Not all of it is important. Also, I will say the writing in this part is between story writing and glazing over details, or something of the like. So if the writing is crappy, I do apologize. This is not easy to write out in any capacity, especially with my limited skills. I will probably be reading it like a story, just because it's easier for me and I feel it's more aware of the topics. Trigger warning ahead. There are some mentions and implications of gore, blood, death, manipulation, Stockholm Syndrome, and Lima Syndrome. There will be warnings and timestamps on screen as best as I can place them. I will try not to go too far, but you have been warned. We'll start with V's first life back in BA, where a human gives birth to her after accepting a deal and being taken to Rothel, where demons live. To summarize the context, Via's father, the High Majesty, offered a deal to a woman by the name of Amara Valaris. He would leave her state alone if she visited him in Rothel from time to time. If she accepted the deal and later broke it, a spell of amnesia would be set upon her, leaving her with distorted dreams as a reminder of who she once was. Amara takes the deal, initially just to save her state, but eventually falls for the High Majesty, Lucifer, as Lucifer fell for Amara. Soon, she ends up pregnant and gives birth to V. V lived in Rothal for the first several years of her life to keep things consistent with her development. As she got older, however, she was brought to the physical realm so she could visit her human family. Soon, however, V's powers were too strong for her not to be able to control them, and it was time for her to harness them. With that, her training began around 10 years old, Nephilim years. Amara wasn't excited that V was enduring training at such a young age, though she knew it was partially necessary so that both V and others remained safe. Though once it became too stressful for V, Amara knew it was time for this to stop. Amara brought it up to Lucifer, but it turns out that he can't, at his core, change who he is and how he understands to communicate and function, as he, the High Majesty, is essentially a constant, unmoving force personified. It was Lucifer's thought that V was similar to her half-siblings in that she would also love her role in the apocalypse as they did. V was his child, after all. However, Amara had seen differently and decided it was time for herself and V to get out, even if that meant breaking Lucifer's deal with her. That night, Amara took V in, who was just 11 years old in Nephilim years, and snuck through the palace. Just as soon as the two of them made it to the gate between realms, V screamed as her hand was ripped from Amara's, right before the portal moved to a different location and Amara's amnesia set in. There was no way back. V spent many years in Rothal after the separation, training under the authority of Odium, as Lucifer continued to watch over his children and the slow destruction and regrowth of the world from a distance. With Odium as her commander, she was forced to follow her other 3 siblings to the physical realm where they'd spread destruction and in controlled amounts. At first, V was strongly opposed to her role as the Horseman of Death, trying frequently to escape and find her mother, only to fail as she was shackled and could only go so far. Soon, after lots of deep, thorough manipulation and being told that the only way to save people from their inevitable suffering was through death, V was compliant. Odium even went as far as to cast hallucinations upon V of people who were doing okay, suffering when she grew defiant. Eventually, V grew far too resistant to the manipulation. Despite it still deeply affecting her, she refused to willingly contribute to the chaos, hoping that if she just gave up, it would all stop. Because of this, she was sent to isolation where she began to watch all the suffering that she was told she was causing through a globe. She was left in psychological agony over all the suffering she was forced to watch and listen to. Because she wasn't there to end the suffering of everyone, their deaths were slow and painful, life only losing its grip when the being it had its grasp on grew beyond inhumane suffering. It was at this point, when she was 18 in Nephilim years, that V developed the thought process of, if I'm not dead, I can still save people. With this thought in mind, it caused her to overexert her body and magic to break free from isolation and cause chaos within Rothal in hopes of getting the physical realm to save souls. This raw burst of power caused Lucifer to reinstate his authority to get her under control. However, by the time he was able to get to V, she was already past the gate into the physical realm. When Lucifer finally got her mostly under control, he resorted to encasing her within the center of a large field of crystals so hot yet so cold that touching them would invoke a sensation of freezing and burning at the same time. For just over 4 centuries, V was kept inside the crystals in an unconscious state. Her body focused on constantly healing and numbing her injuries and pain rather than breaking free due to the exhaustion. A few hundred years into NOE, a young goddess, Nerium, found V while flying over the crystal field. Recognizing the crystals and V from her time in the physical realm, Nerium was tempted to help set her free, knowing full well the crystals were draining. However, it took Nerium a while to properly decide if she should release V, as she knew it was taboo amongst the deities to disregard a higher deity's ruling. Though after 3 days of careful consideration and preparation for what might happen should things go wrong, Nerium decided to set V free. As Nerium was a second generation of the goddesses, it took all of her magic to get V out without harming her. In the process of setting her free, Nerium had to simultaneously melt away the crystals while applying a rewind spell upon V. And being a form of time spell, Nerium wasn't as experienced with it, but knew it was safer to place a rewind spell than to just melt away the crystals and have V burst out in a continued rage and panic. When the spell was finished and the main crystal had melted away, V was left as a baby. Though her skin had partially healed thanks to the rewind spell, the damage done to her from being stuck for so long left her rather pale. Finally, knowing that with age V's memories would return, Nerium placed a simple lock spell on V to hide all her old memories and power away from her, and to keep her and others safe. Any stronger of a spell at this young of an age would have done damage to her psyche. As soon as the spells were finished, Nerium carried V over to the house of a woman named Asali. The request was difficult. Hide V and raise her as her own to keep V safe. Asali, who had already adopted a little boy named Ace, accepted, as Nerium was a dear friend and Asali trusted her with her life. As promised, Asali raised and loved V as her own. V and her adoptive family lived together in the village of Fieldgate, where none of the villagers but her family knew of her demon origin. This secret was kept from the villagers, as they would not take kindly with the thought that V was demonic in nature. Though the villagers were unaware of how V was different, some did realize she wasn't exactly human, as she aged slightly slower than regular humans. On top of that, some of Nerium's magic had been imbued into V while being saved, allowing her to easily heal and restore a variety of living beings without having to learn much of anything about rehabilitation magic. This caused her to be considered a blessing from the deities, which, in a way, she was. V spent much of her childhood playing with her adoptive brother Ace, their best friend Oscar, and many of the village kids. The three of them would even help Asali run the cafe and make frequent visits to Nerium's home in the forest. Despite the happy times, nightmares were a prominent part of her life. Flickers of a time long since past haunting her, occasionally speaking in a language long since forgotten. A language that was only otherwise recognized by Nerium. It was also peculiar that ever since V was freed, ravens nested in the village and surrounding forests. All the nesting ravens slowed, however, as she got older. This was a good thing, as performing another lock spell on her wouldn't be as safe, as she was still young. While all was well in Fieldgate, it would not remain as such, as the town leader grew resentful towards Asali. Asali had been offered a secondary home in the capital city of Sunspire, where she could serve her dishes in the city for the better half of the year. The town's leader had been trying to convince her to stay in Fieldgate, where V could continue to make things grow and prosper. Asali, however, would turn him down countless times, both for opportunities and V's sake. Because of this, the town's leader began to spread lies of Asali, his heart full of greed and hate. He'd say Asali had been practicing banned magic, was a thief and a traitor, not only to the town, but to the nations for practicing magic without proper precautions and schooling. Many started off as skeptical, as Asali had lived in the town her whole life and had rarely done wrong by them. So when the town's leader upped the claims, saying his youngest son had seen Asali in the forest with Nerium. Nerium was rarely seen within the town, and with her hair covering her eyes, there was already a lot of superstition about her. If one could not see her eyes, how could they see her soul? What kind of person she was? This being the case, it was easy to spin tales about how Nerium was a bad person, teaching Asali banned magic and how to hide it from people. Now people were getting nervous, tensions growing thick. It was well known that Asali and Nerium were very familiar with each other, and yet no one knew where the strange woman had come from, nor what the two of them were up to while away. On top of that, Asali often brought her kids to the forest where it was presumed that Nerium lived. If the kids were involved, who knew if they were really safe or not? It was a belief that Asali's children were in danger that caused a more extreme group of townsfolk to put a plan into action. All the while, Asali and V were none the wiser, believing that the lies had worn down and traction was slowing due to the move. Ace and Oscar were out traveling with Nerium to try and find a rare plant to grant immortality, so that Asali and Ace could live longer lives with their loved ones. On the night of August 25th, 3:22 NOE, Asali was lured out of her home at 12 a.m. by a group of townsfolk who just wanted to talk. V woke up in a cold sweat. She just had another nightmare and went to go find comfort in Asali. However, when she couldn't find Asali in her house or the cafe, fear sunk down into her stomach. V started running through the town, asking for help from those who were awake, looking for Asali but finding nothing. It was 2:10 a.m., and the last place V could check was the fishing hut. Before she could even open the door, a sickeningly sweet yet metallic stench filled V's lungs, encasing her in a feeling of dread. The scene was graphic. In the center of the room hung Asali, a meat hook shoved through her lower jaw. Burn marks and blood covering her body that was just barely hanging off the ground. The shock finally wears off as V is desperately slamming all of her rehabilitation magic into Asali, babbling hysterically as none of it worked. Sprouts and flowers springing through the wood cracks of the fishing hut. Eventually it sets in that Asali is gone, and is never gonna come back. The nausea and resentment hitting V like a boulder, causing the lock spell to fracture and crumble. Just enough. A great wave of magic washed over her, unleashing a force that blinded her. Her mother was gone. It was all V's fault. She should have paid more attention to the rumors, the lies. She should have known something was wrong. Who hurt Asali? They need to pay. They will pay. Back at the fishing hut, V knelt at the entrance. The ruins of a town she once loved burning behind her. Oscar saw the smoke from a distance, alarm washing over him as he urged Ace and Nerium to hop on his back as he transmuted into a dragon. Within 15 minutes, they saw the destruction. Walls and buildings crumbled and gone, fires dying out as the skies shed tears. And bodies. Oh, the bodies. The only building left standing but was the fishing hut by the lake. Oscar landed, Nerium and Ace sliding off as he transmuted back into a human. All was a thick blur for V. She could barely register Ace yelling at her for what she did until Oscar made him look up at Asali's body through the fishing hut door. This wasn't her fault. Unable to move, the first tears V shed fell to the ground, mixing with the pooling blood. Oscar and Nerium took down Asali's body, the four of them taking Asali and traveling back to Nerium's home in the forest, silence drowning them. Nerium cleaned up Asali's body before the four of them held a funeral for her. Salt and earth were placed into her left and right hands respectively before she was covered in a shroud and buried with a sprig of rosemary at the edge of a cliff overlooking the lake of a village that's no longer there. Her favorite place for peace. Her final place for peace. That night, Nerium performed another lock spell on V, this one stronger than the last. The risk was great, but the reward would be greater should V not be unleashed onto the world again. With the spell stronger than ever, it would take great effort to break. V no longer has nightmares from her first life, but that doesn't do anything for the nightmares from finding her mother. False memories were planted as a replacement for this destruction of the village. The story everyone knows now implanted in V's mind. Rushing through the town looking for Asali, there was a bonfire that some townsfolk left unattended to help search. When she did find Asali's body, V panicked, racing back to the village to tell everyone. However, the fire was too large, the smoke leaving her in a daze as she wandered around desperately trying to find help. Eventually, she collapsed outside of the range of the fire and smoke, waking up a while later and barely making it back to the fishing hut. Ace, Oscar, and Miriam finding her there after returning home from the trip. And now they're here. Oscar, V, and Ace stayed with Miriam for several years till eventually Oscar and Ace left for their own travels. V, however, had to stay with Miriam, to be monitored and watched over. Make sure she was okay and that she had some family and a stable life as she continued to grow, especially since the initial lock spell had fractured and reversed, causing V to age much slower than before. Finally, the year was 4099 NOE, and V was 3790 years old, human, or 15 years old, Nephilim. After ages of staying with Miriam, V was finally permitted to go out on adventures, like she had long since desired. V grew up with Asali talking about her desire to travel all across the world. Turns out it just happened to fuel V's insatiable need to wander the world herself. So off she went. During her travels, V went around the country she grew up in, yay, and explored the different states within it. She spent much of her time wandering and trying to visit places Asali dreamed of seeing. V would also continue to help people the best she could. Though due to her outburst at Fieldgate, her rehabilitation magic had been washed away from her, greatly weakening what she could do should damage be done. Nonetheless, V did her best to protect people while she could, despite her lack of experience in this life. Eventually, after a few centuries of wandering aimlessly, V wound up getting hurt in a fight, the tibia bone in her shin cracking through after taking a rough hit from some thugs robbing a merchant. She didn't let it bother her too much, adrenaline still coursing through her body as she returned the merchant's good and got a ride to town a few days away to see a doctor that the merchant so kindly paid for. Then they parted ways after making sure she was alright, and V headed to a nearby cafe. Just outside the cafe, a man was drinking coffee with some sweets in front of him, a strawberry cake and a lemon tart. He noticed V limping and told her to come sit with him. Though skeptical, she was tired and decided to sit down with him anyway. The man offered her a dessert, asking her to pick one. V eyed the strange man, turning him down saying she didn't need food. Though she was lying, the man saw right through her and requested she order something else instead. "I'll pay," was all that was needed for V to order a plate of jello and some peppermint tea. Once her treat had arrived, she lit up and the two began to eat and drink, chatting and listening as they did so. He introduced himself as Cien Raymond Usenu, or Cien Ray, and confessed to running a training hall several streets away that teaches self-defense classes for any level of experience. He'll even pick up a few students and teach them to fight with swords, specifically sword sticks and cascadas. His father, along with several other members of his family, had been warriors and taught him how to fight with such weaponry since he was young. Cien Ray asked if V had a place to stay, and when she told him she didn't, he offered him his home as he had a spare room, saying that she could stay till she was healed or till she left town. Intrigued with Cien Ray's work and kindness, V agreed and the two went home for the evening. Over the next few days, she stayed in a small guest room within his house as he taught classes in the training hall beneath. She found him to be an honest and respectable man, soon coming to admire and look up to him. The two became good friends, and by the time V had healed completely, he offered to teach her to fight. Of course she accepted, thrilled to spend more time with a new friend while also learning to better protect herself as well as others. Time spun on as they learned more about each other. Cien Ray coming to find that V had the best strawberry cake recipe he's ever had, thanks to Asali, and V learned more about his experience as someone with a longer than average lifespan, similar to herself. Cien Ray first insisted on teaching V to fight hand-to-hand, as he did with all his students. This being because one might not always have a weapon, but they'll hopefully always keep their limbs. It took V years to master the techniques Cien Ray had taught her. She was a little on the slow side, but it was fun. Once V finally finished learning how to fight hand-to-hand, Cien Ray asked if she'd be interested in helping protect the city they lived in with him. She agreed, of course, excited to put all her extra energy to good use with all she'd been taught. They worked together, acting as assistants to fire and police forces, taking on tasks that the forces were either too short-staffed to handle or needed outside volunteers for. They helped put out fires, save civilians, stopped thieves and murderers, etc. This lasted many decades, all the while Cian-Rei was teaching classes, V now acting as assistant. V soon became interested in his sword fighting classes, asking him to teach her. Cian-Rei obliged, happy to teach a dear friend something new. She studied sword fighting under him for many years, never quite getting the hang of it, but not totally failing at it either. Everything V consciously knows about fighting, she learned from Cian-Rei. One day, the two of them went up against a larger group of opponents, one of which had a scythe. Rare choice of weapon, but not too hard to find. The lot of them were robbing a group of merchants with high-value goods from other states and countries. V was drawn to the way the person with the scythe moved and fought, realizing it felt oddly familiar. It was only when one of the robbers laughed at how foolish V was for spacing out that she snapped out of it. Instincts that should have been long since hidden taking over as she disarmed the person with the scythe and used it to help Cian-Rei defeat the rest of the robbers. When the two of them returned home, Cian-Rei confronted V, asking her where she learned to fight like that. She didn't know. In fact, she had, at least not to her memory, never fought with one before. V described the overwhelming feeling she had when she laid eyes on the warrior with the scythe. Something visceral telling her that that weapon was something she needed to connect with. Then when she had it, it just felt natural. As if something had possessed her instincts and rewritten them to reveal this skill she never knew she had. Cian-Rei believed her, something telling him that there was something more to V than meets the eye. They continued to fight together for another few years afterwards. Eventually, however, the time came when V felt she should leave and continue her travels. Before they parted ways, Cian-Rei gave V a scythe of her very own that he had custom made by a very well-respected weaponsmith he knew as a gift. Think in Genshin Impact terms to be like a 3-star with great but not max fortification, or a 4-star with little to no fortification. This was not a goodbye, but simply a till we meet again. This way she'd always remember their time together. V gave him a Solly's strawberry cake recipe that he loved so much, so he could have it whenever he wanted. And with that, the two bid each other farewell, and V left with her newfound knowledge of combat. The two departed from each other around 5,887 NOE, when V was 5,579 years old, human, or almost 16 years old, Nephilim. V spent much time after her departure finding and attending different holidays and festivals of all sorts, as she deemed it a pleasant reminder of home, and found them to be full of magic and wonder. Of course, she would also protect and defend those who needed it, taking little commissions here and there to earn some money. All the while, she and Cian-Rei were exchanging letters to each other to keep in contact, V always making sure to tell Cian-Rei where she was heading to next in order to get his next letter. She'd find someone in town to read and write it for her, since she struggles to do so herself. In one letter, V finds out that Cian-Rei is retiring and his students were throwing a party in honor of him. V, of course, was invited to come celebrate for old time's sake. So, through the way portals, V traveled till she got to the city of Purehold where they first met. Waiting for her at the entrance of the city was Cian-Rei. They ate and drank together, Cian-Rei's students gathering the entire town to throw a grand celebration in honor of the man who had helped them for so long. V even brought a large sum of really good strawberries for Asali's cake recipe as a special treat. The celebration went on for 5 days. Then it was just Cian-Rei and V. They talked more about what had been going on in their lives, laughed, and told stories that couldn't fit into letters. V stayed with him for a little over a week before they finally said their goodbyes, still planning to keep in touch. As V strolled out of the city and through the forest, the sun eventually set, the sky growing dim. Under the faint light of the moon, she settled under the trees and rested for the night, ghostlands watching and surrounding her in curiosity. By morning, several squibbles, or baby ghostlands, were cuddled up next to her. When she awoke, She saw several looking up at her in curiosity from where they slept. It only took a few moments before several other ghostlings woke up as well, still deeming her a curious sight. Amused by her new little friends, she picked up some freshly fallen camphor wood leaves and fed it to them. Then, making sure not to squish any of them, she collected all the ghostlings that were on and around her, laying them back down on the camphor tree they slept under. One of them, however, rolled right back onto her hand. They were just a baby, but they were attached to V like a lost puppy that had finally found a companion. They liked V, wanted to stay with her. Looking around at the tiny creatures surrounding her, they jumped and squeaked in excitement. V took it as permission to take the little ghostling with her, and named them Wrentwig. The two were inseparable, taking on many commissions together and finding out that Wrentwig could eat some human food, though only in small amounts as to avoid a bellyache. The year was now 7276 NOE, and V was 6,967 years old human, or 16 years old Nephilim. V met a girl named Lily in the village of Might Ward. Lily was young, only just having her 6th birthday upon meeting V. The thing about Lily, though, was she was incredibly ill with a disease no one knew how to treat or cure. This didn't stop the little girl from playing with the other kids while she could, however. V admired this about Lily, but saw the sorrow in the villagers' eyes. They all knew Lily wouldn't make it much longer, and they couldn't take another heartbreak. It was with this that V consulted Lily and the villagers, asking to take care of Lily as she was capable of protecting and caring for others. The villagers were hesitant, but ended up agreeing in the end, wanting to have some faith in V as she seemed as an honest and noble person. Lily was very excited at the idea, wanting to explore the country. Thus, V took Lily across all the places in Yei she had already seen, but knew Lily had not. The duo grew close very quickly, Wrentwig even finding a love for their new friend. They got to explore forests and fields, wandering to festivals where they both danced and played together. They were having so much fun. One day, they were traveling to a way arch, getting ready to head to the city of Maple Pond. Lily wanted to see the big 10-day festival that always came around this time of year. It was famous across the nation for how big, bold, and beautiful it was. Lily wanted to try all the new foods and see everything they had to offer, but as they were walking through a field, something bit her. Small but dangerous due to its venomous bite, and Lily's immune system was weak. Lily cried out, the pain surprising her as V's eyes widened, quickly kicking the snake away before she could even fully comprehend what happened. Then she picked up Lily, realizing the damage, and began to sprint. V's legs pounded away at the dirt and clay beneath her, hoping and praying to whatever deities were listening that there was still time. It would only take a few hours for the poison to become fatal. There had to be time to get to Maple Pond. It took V 2.5 hours of endless running to finally get there, even with the way arch. V's legs were numb, buzzing with the feeling of static. The only thing she could think of was, there's still time, there's still time, there's still time. When they got to the city, V looked everywhere for a doctor, someone who could help remove the poison before it was too late. Maybe give Lily an antidote, something, anything. But by the time she finally found one, it was too late. Lily touched V's face with her clammy, frozen hands. She thanked V for making her dreams come true, hugging her with the last remaining strength she had, and then she took her final breath. V held on to Lily for a few more moments, the words just barely sinking in. She's not dead, she's not dead, she can't be dead, her time hasn't come yet, it's too soon, she's only 7, she's too young to be dead, Lily isn't dead. V pulled Lily's body off of her and looked into her eyes. She was gone, growing colder by the second. V stood up. Lily's still in her arms. She thanked the doctor, then she left. She stumbled through the city, the sun starting to set. She wandered all the way to the edge of a cliff, outside of a forest overlooking Maple Pond, a place similar to a Solly had always loved. There, she buried Lily's body in the shroud, putting her earth in her right hand and salt in her left. This way, when the time came, the festival arrived and Lily could watch. even if just from afar. After burying Lily, Vi planned to leave, go elsewhere, but something told her to stay. Both of them had made it 7 days before the festival would start. Something told Vi to wait for it, to celebrate the festival for the both of them. It was Lily's dream, after all. Vi took Lily's doll, not being able to let go of the girl she had spent so much time with. She then went to Maple Pond and waited 7 days. When the time came, Vi made sure to enjoy the festival as best she could for the both of them, doing everything Lily wanted to do and more. From that day onward, Vi kept Lily's doll as a reminder of their wonderful friendship. She continued on her travels for a short while, but battling guilt and depression soon became too much for her, and she wound up staying shut in a little apartment in the village of Silk Hollow, still taking commissions here and there to afford food and necessities, still protecting the people she could, even when she felt she couldn't. One day, Vi opened up to a stranger passing through town, just enough to admit she had lost many people in her life. The stranger nodded, offered her a drink and some advice. "Don't you think they'd be sad to see you wasting away like this? Go out, find new friends. Your family is never really far behind. The most precious beings we care for are never gone, just hidden in the fog for a while. They'll always be with you, even in the dark." Vi pondered this, soon finding out that she agreed with the sentiment. The pain may never leave, but that didn't mean she had to let go. So, anxious as she was, Vi traveled onwards, hoping to keep up all she could for those she'd lost. This leads us to the current year, 7876 NOE, where Vi is now 7569 years old, human, or 17 years old, Nephilim. She's heard of a legendary scythe from VA, and she feels she needs to go find it for herself. May the story begin. Oh my goodness, okay, we finally finished the backstory, and the script has gone from 19 pages to 41, and I'm not even done yet. The next section is about Vi's relationship with others. Vi's best friends are, of course, Mina, Rin, Ace, Oscar, Candace, and Lily, with some other of her friends being Bonnie, Charlotte, Poppy, Pippin, Ayami, Oleander, Halia, Letty, Nerium, Cienray, Enola, Kiki, Demonte, and several others. She's never really been in a romantic or QPR partner, so that's not much to note on. She does, however, have a few role models, Asali, Cienray, and Lady Rain. We shouldn't really have to cover Vi's family, adoptive or biological, as that was told in her past. We can, however, go over perceptions. I want others to perceive Vi as fiery, athletic, and confident. She's also gotten an intense resting phase, so people may eye her warily. Vi, on the other hand, tends to trust in others the best she can. She knows that there are cases where she may regret it, but she'd rather trust and regret than doubt and regret. To her, everyone deserves to learn, grow, and be a good person, even if they weren't always one. Strong believer that everyone should be treated humanely, even if that means a physical lesson should be taught, or to be given the bare minimum of respect and care. Very few people have challenged or broken this belief of hers, and even when they have, it's only been a case-by-case basis. Vi views herself as never strong enough in many aspects in life. She's constantly striving for self-improvement so she can better help others, but it's never enough for her. It gets worse when she does regain her memories from her first life, only learning to forgive herself and become more confident when she learns to talk things out and let things go. Vi's biggest flaws are her stubbornness, impatience, and slight pettiness. She's also fairly tactless, reckless, and somewhat erratic and self-destructive. This is especially true when she loses control of herself. When she needs advice, she has several people she can go to, including her best friends, Miriam, Hiroyuki, and Candy's parents. Though I will admit she's not the most likely to ask for advice or help, usually doing everything she can to fix things herself or avoid asking due to the fear of getting others hurt while involved. She does eventually learn she can't do everything by herself, however. One of her favorite ways to express herself and vent is not only talking to the ravens and butterflies, but also origami. Dancing too, of course, but origami is something she uses to symbolize things. Everyone has a favorite something, so she'll take that favorite and turn it into an origami piece that symbolizes them. There are some other things in this category, but I think we can move over and skip over the things that are rather repetitive. We can probably skip over some of the less interesting stuff, like routine and family origins, as those are decently covered in her backstory as well. What we can probably move on to is V's motivations and beliefs. It's mostly some listed stuff, but I find it cool, so I'll share it with those who are interested. V is very much an optimist with some deep inner pessimism. She prefers a more creative style of working and learning rather than structured, as it works best for her. She's otherwise a very productive procrastinator. I'm not sure how to describe it other than that, though. If you know, you know, I guess? She is an advocate for the world government system, so long as it does as it's supposed to and doesn't betray the systems and its roots. I can go more on about the world government system in another video about countries or history, but until then, we'll just move on. V is definitely more adventurous than cautious, especially when she's alone. She's a fighter that fights for what she deems ethical and just, but when she's scared, she tends to either fight, freeze, or go into flight mode, depending on the situation, and it's not really in any particular order. This is based on the idea that our brains go into one of 5 modes when afraid. Fight or flight are the most common, but there's also freeze, flop, and friend/fawn. I'd say V's biggest regret is not being able to save Asali or Lily in time. Then later the deaths of the townsfolk in Fieldgate. She's fairly superstitious, with some religious beliefs, as she, like many others, believes in the deities of their world. Some of her superstitions she's picked up, however, are folding 1,000 paper cranes brings happiness or a wish, and spicy foods at night bring good fortune, and broken bottles bring bad luck. She's not sure where she picked up these beliefs, but she's not willing to test if some of these are real or just in her head. Breaks the mystery of it all. V's proudest accomplishment is healing from her regained memories and accepting herself. Her worst moment, though, is losing everything. Her past with her mother, Fieldgate, and Lily, and then finding out what she is and almost losing her friends when pushing them away after she finds out what she is. Some secrets she keeps from others is that she feels slightly detached from reality at times, often becoming disoriented as well. V also has felt she's much stronger than she is, as if she could just tap into access power, but something is blocking it. Little does she know it's all because of the lock spell that she feels this way. Some of the secrets that are kept from V is that she's a Nephilim, she's the Horseman of Death, and the identity of her biological mother. Only Miriam knows of all of these secrets and is the one keeping them from her. Ace and Oscar only know she's a Nephilim, but the others of V's friends do eventually find everything out, but that's not until much later. I think one of the last things I'll talk about is some of V's phobias. I'm probably gonna butcher some of these names, but let's get into it. She has mild crystal phobia, fear of crystals or glass, intense athazagoraphobia, fear of being forgotten or forgetting someone or something, intense atithophobia. It's the fear of failure. Moderate autophobia, fear of being alone. Moderate necrophobia, fear of death or dead things. Slightly intense ornithophobia. I am so bad at pronouncing words, but it's the fear of birds. Although in her case, it's just a fear of crows, hooded vultures, and barn owls, but not much else. And finally, we have some advice V would give to her younger self. Just because you didn't save them doesn't mean you could have saved them. It's better to let go than to hold on so tightly you hurt yourself. And we've finished V's character profile. Honestly, I'm not sure if anyone will be interested in this, but I wanted to do something for my characters. I've been working on this story for the better part of 7 years now. It's honestly been a lot of fun and is very beneficial for my knowledge. If you guys like this video, I'll be happy to keep working on videos like these when and where I can. If you'd like to support me and see more art from me, I'll have my Patreon linked in the description where I post once a week. I'll also have my Ko-Fi linked below for anyone who'd like a commission. Anyway, this script is getting too long, so as always, I'm Kiyomi's Storybook, and if you are still here, I'd like to thank all of you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed your time with me and have a wonderful day or night.